You're going to get a special treat today. Very rarely do you get a leading political figure in this country who acts like a public servant first. And very rarely do you get a chance to have an off the record conversation with that person as if they're in their own living room or yours. Very often do you get to see not only the head, but the heart and the soul of a leader. You're going to get all that today. I am honored to introduce you to, at the 2020 annual meeting of Hope Global Forum, a meeting talking about America on Reset, healing a nation, an opportunity for all. I'm happy and honored to introduce Governor Gina Raimondo, the governor of Rhode Island, the first female governor of Rhode Island in the history of the state. A Rhodes Scholar, a top of her class Harvard graduate, somebody who comes from humble beginnings. Her father struggled hard as an immigrant in this country, and after working at one employer for, I think, 26 years, laid off. So she's seen somebody lose their purpose. She's seen somebody in her own household that she respected and admired lose their identity and their focus, their sense of, yes, I am, and what I can do. She's seen how that degrades and grinds on the human spirit and how it affects everybody around that person. This is the normal, everyday struggle for underserved America. She grew up in a household of butchers, a family in the beef business, in the meat business, in the butcher business in Rhode Island. And one could argue that a young girl, a woman, would have a place. She decided to have a place at the seat at the head of the table because her family also taught her and inspired her to reach high. And reach high is exactly what she did. Top of her class in school, top of her class in Harvard, as I already mentioned, Rhodes Scholar. And today she's, I think, a model governor for the nation. We're gonna get into the conversation. You're gonna hear some of her accomplishments, but more importantly, you're gonna see her heart. I think you'll literally feel the depth of her care and her soul. And she governs for all people, be they Democrat, be they Republican, be they Black, be they white, be they rich, be they poor. And I think she's got a model. We're partnering with her on some work there at Operation Hope, and we're going to deepen our relationship. She understands the new Marshall Plan I wrote because in many ways her family lived the Marshall Plan, and she governs a state that had once had the highest unemployment in the nation. And before COVID hit, she had returned it to its prominence of one of the lowest unemployment rates in the country and one of only 4 states with free community college education, which, let's just say, an investment in all of her people. Ladies and gentlemen, my friend, Governor Gina Raimondo.
Thank you, John. That was a especially kind and generous introduction. Although that's how I try to live, and an ideal that I try to live up to. What you say is so true. I don't think of myself as a politician. I do think of myself as a public servant, elected to serve all the people, whether they voted for me or not. And that's been truer during COVID than ever. So thanks for having me. As I was chatting with you before the program, thank you for all you're doing. I love it. I love that you are taking the occasion of the crisis going on in America to move forward on concrete, bold changes. And I think it's terrific. So keep going. And the more we can partner together, the more successful and effective we're both going to be.
Well, thank you, my friend. You know, I learned early, never let a crisis go to waste.
Yeah,
and
so
God really does have a sense of humor. We've got a global health pandemic, the worst in over 100 years. We have a national economic crisis and a 400-year-old social justice reckoning with regard to Black America. all happening within the course of 4 months. And on top of that, you've got environmental challenges, sustainability challenges, and a world that was trying to move from analog to digital, from physical to technology based. And it's taken us 15 years or 10 years to go from 0 to 15% e-commerce penetration in this country. And now we've gone from 15 to 25% e-commerce penetration in 8 months. It is compressed. Our worlds are compressed. Our lives are compressed. And challenges like this don't, in my opinion, don't build your character, it reveals it. And your character has really been revealed in this crisis as well. It's made me even more interested in aligning with you and hanging around you and watching you and listening to you. And I marvel at how my Republican and my Democratic friends, and let me say it the other way around, my Democratic and my Republican friends, somebody thinks I'm picking sides here, both admire you equally. I think this comes from your background. This is a question, but your dad's struggle, coming from a family, I believe, of butchers, if I got that right, and meat butchers, and he struggled for 26 years, not being fully recognized for his challenges. I think he worked someplace, and I think was laid off there as well, and it was a tough deal. And you grew up in that environment as I'll say, an immigrant family, outside of the power structure, working class. And you decided, again, this is just my take on you. You tell me if I'm wrong. You doubled down and decided that the way you're going to level the playing field was to be the smartest person in the room. And you went to school and took folks to school and killed it on your grades. I think you even became a Rhodes Scholar, something like that. Went to Harvard. If I got this right, majored in economics or something and killed it again. I mean, these are just not things that somebody would say a woman should do. No different than somebody would say that a person of color, a black male, I'm in first class or business class when we used to have be in planes. Are you an entertainment attorney? Are you, Mr. Bryan, are you in the sports field? Because that's where people were used to seeing black folks with a suit on, or black folks aspiring, as if that's the only thing we can do. That person didn't mean any harm. That's just they're living their perceived norms, and there are perceived norms about women in the 20th century, and even in the 21st century, as we are now finding. We are reminded that you're not supposed to be doing all that stuff, and then you went on and not just achieved in business and in civil society, but became governor of Rhode Island at a time where Rhode Island's unemployment was one of the worst in the country, if not the worst in the country.
The worst.
Where half of your residents have a high school education, if I got that right, about that. And now it's one of the, before COVID-19, you had repaired that so it was one of the highest performing states on that index in the country. And I just wonder whether your move to make, I think you're the fourth state to make community college education free. I'll call it an investment. That's what I call it in my new Marshall Plan. I see it as an investment, not a cost. Free to all citizens. And I can't help, now I could be all washed up here, but I can't help but connect your personal journey with your move to liberate your people with education for all. Can you talk to me about that? What did I get right? What did I get wrong?
Yeah, no, look, I think it's very well said. My family were immigrants from Italy on both sides, came here not speaking the language, with no money at all. And through hard work, family, love, luck, managed to make a life for themselves. My aunt dropped out of one of the smartest people I'll ever know was my aunt, my father's sister.
Yeah.
So smart, so talented in so many ways.
Yeah.
Good in school, dropped out of high school to get a job at a bakery to support the family, and never went back. And always say, and never had a job, or she struggled her whole life financially, and did that so her brothers could have a chance.
Yeah.
So she contribute her pay to her family. And she would say to my brother, my sister, and me, don't think you are where you are on your own. You're there because of our sacrifice.
Wow.
And you better work as hard as you can in order to make something of yourselves. Now, my dad was the first guy in our family to go to college. He went on the GI Bill. He served in the Second World War. You got it. You asked me why I have religion about this? Because it's my life.
Yeah.
He never could have gone to college. His parents didn't go. His brothers and sisters didn't go. I just told you the story about his sister. He served in the Second World War in the Navy, and then he got to go to college. And that one college degree changed my life, my brother, my sister, my kids, my mother's life forever. Like you talk about, developing wealth, generations of wealth. Started because, who paid for his college? The United States government. It was an investment and has generated generations of wealth and opportunity.
And still doing it.
And it's absolutely still doing it. So now, like you said, it wasn't always easy. He got a job at the Boulevard Watch Factory once upon a time in Rhode Island in the 80s, 60s, 70s, 80s. We were the jewelry manufacturing capital of the world, really.
Rhode Island.
Rhode Island was. Boulevard Watch had 2,000 people here. Tiffany had a big factory here. Spidell had a huge factory here. It seemed to me as a kid growing up, everybody's dad worked in some jewelry business. Anyway, my dad worked at the Boulevard Watch Company. It was I will say I was blessed. We were never rich, but we were never poor. As my dad said, there was always food on the table and a roof over our head, and he was right. And he got into his carpool in the morning and went off to the factory. And as a kid, it seemed like there was a job at that factory for everybody. His buddies were the custodian, the security guard, etc. After working there for 26 years, he was 56 years old, and they closed up shop, moved the jobs to China, and he was out of luck.
Wow.
And then after that, he never really had a good job again. That was rough. Again, we were never, I don't want to say we were ever poor because we weren't, but I remember when I got into Harvard.
By the way, that hit his self-esteem, didn't it? When he lost that job and couldn't get another good one, that hit his self-esteem, his confidence.
That was the end. That was the end of his pride. It's not. He's, God rest his soul. He's passed now. It was so much more than a job.
That's right.
For years after he lost his job, whatever he was down or cranky, in a bad mood, short-tempered with us, the kids, I'm the youngest of three, my mother would say, you guys just don't get it. Your dad lost his pride, his confidence, his purpose, his identity. His purpose and identity was to be a provider.
Yep.
And 56 with 3 kids, it crushed him, and he never did recover. He never did recover, as you say, psychologically, financially, and it created a lot of stress.
You just described the experience of Black men in America. That's what I'm talking about in this book, Up From Nothing. It's the crushed self-esteem. the absent confidence, the absent belief in yourself, and then the shame and the indignity of not being able to take care of your families. So black men didn't show up in the household. They didn't have to, so now you got a whole generation. We're talking people talking about baby mamas and baby daddies and all that, and black women taking care of households because the black woman has the job. She's got the identity. She's got and black men, we didn't have it. There really was not a Marshall Plan for us. When black GIs came back out of the military, a very small fraction of them were able to get that house, that apprenticeship, and that education, and they were rejected. And so your
totally
experience really resonates with me in that regard.
I'm so glad you said that, because there's so many people like me, white people, who have came from.
You're white? You're pretty cool.
Who came from not perfect backgrounds, immigrant backgrounds, not rich, blue collar, but yet we had so many more privileges than black people in the same situation. So take my little family. My grandpa, as you said, you were right. All my father, all his brothers, my grandfather, they were all butchers. They were meat cutters.
Okay.
I was a 5-year-old girl. I could tell you every cut of meat. I could go through the whole cow and tell you every piece of meat. We were grilled on that. So I knew that as a little girl. But anyway, my grandfather was a meat cutter and made his living, but he was also one of the guys that founded the Meat Cutters Union in Rhode Island. Couldn't get to join unions. My grandpa and his friends, and this was a long time ago, could get in the union, raise their wages, get better working conditions. Back then it was wages, but it was safety because it was a dangerous job. Better working conditions. Black people were shut out of that institution. My dad got the GI Bill, got to go to college. Once again, black folks were left out. So today, when people, sometimes it really galls me when I hear white folks say their parents were immigrants and they pulled themselves up by their bootstraps. And it's like, come on, that's true. You worked hard. So did I. But don't you ever forget that you weren't the victim of really systemic racism that, as you said before, is hundreds of years old.
Is the largest reverse transfer of wealth in world history because America is the largest economy in the world. And for 246 years, so my grandfather, my great grandfather was a slave. My grandfather, R.B. Smith, probably was a slave as a child. He wrote in 1871, but he somehow found an independent streak and some opportunity and was able by 1940 to own a farm. My dad became a business owner because his father was. I became a business owner because my father was. But that story started in 1940. He was born in 1871. Before that, it was just slavery. So from 1619 to 1870, you didn't get the benefit of your labor if you were in my family. You worked hard, and the guy with the big house, his house got bigger. Reverse transfer of labor. And you couldn't build capital because you were capital. They traded you, financed you, insured you. And so the richest city in the world, Governor, in 1850 was Natchez, Mississippi. We know the business that they were in. And American GDP was 2/3 cotton in 1850. The word millionaire came out of New York City in 1850. So it is not an emotional conversation. It is math. That if you look at today, the average African American makes 60 cents on the dollar of their white counterparts. The net worth is 8 cents of their white counterparts. This is literally somebody starting the monopoly game a few hundred years further along with different rules. And no one's asking today for handouts or sympathy statement. We're saying racism is an expensive levy. And how many tens of trillions of dollars in additional GDP would America get, and how many hundreds of billions of dollars would the eastern states get, and specifically Rhode Island get, if we said knock it off to all this silliness and we all agree we're on the same team? And that's really where what I love so much about how you, in my opinion, have taken your personal story and made it a professional mandate.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit? Go ahead.
No, so you mentioned earlier that one of the things I've done, and it's one of the things about which I'm most proud, is I brought about tuition-free community college. And I did that, again, my own personal experience. People said to me, when I campaigned for that, it was not popular, actually.
Yeah. Wow.
Many people said, it was surprising. Truthfully, it was very surprising to me. It was not popular. It is now because it's a success, but at the time it wasn't. So many people said, I paid for my kids, I paid for myself. The government shouldn't be doing that. And I would say, well, and I would go through the story of my dad, first guy in his family to go to college. And I said, it was the government that paid for him, and it changed my whole family's trajectory forever. So for me, it was personal. But here's what I was going to say. 2 years after starting that initiative, we've seen an increase of on-time graduation rates of students of color of 5 times, 500% increase.
Wow.
500% increase in on-time graduation rate of kids of color, young people of color. So what does that tell you? That tells you these young people are smart, ambitious, want to work hard. They're not looking for a handout. Want to work hard, stay in school, graduate, do well. They just broke. They don't have the money.
That's right.
And that's not fair. That's not fair.
Not fair.
And the average size of our scholarship is hundreds of dollars. So what does that tell you? I'll never forget, I did I think it was radio program when I was trying to get the Promise program passed. And the guy interviewing me said, oh, come on, Governor, you're telling me people drop out of college over $500? I said, absolutely, it happens every day.
Yes.
He said, they can't just go to their grandma and say, hey, grandma, hey, grandpa, give me a loan. I said, no, maybe you could. But my grandma and grandpa couldn't give me a loan. And these kids, where do they go? So their choices are literally pay the money, pay the $500 for tuition, or pay the rent, or help my mother, or pay the health care. I had a state trooper. I'm the first female governor in Rhode Island. I said I wanted to have, in the history, first woman ever in the history of Rhode Island. And I said I wanted to have a female trooper on my detail to protect me. So I also have and that's the first time that's ever happened.
Yeah.
First time ever a woman protected the governor. It happens she's a woman of color, and she's awesome.
Yeah.
She grew up poor section of Providence, young Black woman, awesome, smart, fabulous. One night I was telling the story, and she was driving me, of how many people drop out of college over $400, $500. They drop out, they never go back, a lifetime of poverty. We're driving home that day, and she said, Governor, you know that story you tell? That was me. I said, what are you talking about?
Wow.
She said, I was a sophomore in college. My grandmother died, and we had a choice. My father came to me, and we had a choice. We could either pay for Grandma's funeral or pay for the next semester's classes. So we decided as a family, we'll pay for Grandma's funeral. But, one thing leads, once you drop out,
that's right.
One thing, another, she got married. Now, it worked out great for her. She's a state trooper. She's fantastic. But she never got the degree. And I think she will get it one day. So, my point, I'll be damned if $500 is going to stand in the way of somebody getting a degree and achieving their dreams. It's not right. It's not fair. And it's an investment, not charity.
No doubt about it. And I believe that education banishes ignorance, banishes racism, banishes fear, breeds confidence. You cannot have a world-class country and a world-class state that have primarily high school educated people. It's just it's not a value statement. It's common sense. You need as much education as you can shove down your throat. That is the American aspiration. That is our royalty. Is that educated class, that business class, that ownership class, and you have to start by owning yourself as this trooper, saying, I want to own my own independence. And so this is what you're doing here is a gateway for so many. And I have to remind my Caucasian friends that their first winners of affirmative action were them. They had 300 years of white affirmative action. You can figure that one out later. And it was massive. I mean, it created the largest economy in the world. I mean, free labor and free capital for 300 years. I hope you enjoyed it. Okay, now it's time to level the playing field. And this is an investment, it's not a tax, and it's not a giveaway program. This makes everybody better. Crime goes down, hope goes up, GDP goes up, job gets created, everybody wins. I love what you're doing there, and I don't think I realized until recently how easily you globbed onto, or not globbed onto, but attached yourself to the vision of the New Marshall Plan, because it was your family's story. New Marshall Plan, what I wrote, because it was your family's story. You understood it so well. The upgrading of that, it worked before. It created the white middle class. Why can't it upgrade now to create an all of us middle class? What you're doing with education, what you're doing I want to talk a little bit about your COVID-19 response work and a couple of the things you're doing there in the state that you're so proud of. And we're going to announce at this Hope Global Forum something else that we're going to work on a little bit later, which is going to hopefully supercharge Black business creation in your state. But talk to me right now about how through what lens did you see COVID-19, and what caused you to pivot so adeptly and specifically around your response, which included jobs and business?
Yeah. So it's been rough. Governors have been on the front line of this. The president has not exactly been a great leader, to say the least. And he did the opposite of what a leader should do, which is he was hands off, not my problem, you guys deal with it. So that was crystal clear to me, really, after the first governor's conference call with the president, that we better figure it out, because no one else was coming. You know, that's what they say in the military, no one else is coming. That's how I felt. You know, like it's us or nothing. So we got on it very aggressively. I'll never forget the day I shut down schools. That was tough. That's your holy cow moment. Like, wow, I never thought, here I was reelected in this landslide to a second term. I'm like, this is going to be good. Second term. I know what I'm doing.
Right.
Get hit with COVID. But so listen, I feel grateful, really, to the people of Rhode Island who've been unbelievably, incredibly generous, and also following the rules, opening their hearts and wallets and minds to come together so we could beat this thing. And we are. We're testing more than nearly any state in America. Most of the kids are back in school safely. Have mandatory mask wearing. People are following the rules.
Good.
It's very difficult for many people still. So in no way am I sugarcoating that. It's really tough.
Sure.
But as I look at other states, I feel pretty good about where we are, all things considering. I will tell you, you asked me about the pivot to the economy. I am much, much more worried about the long-term, short-term and long-term negative impacts of the economic crisis than I am about the COVID crisis. I mean, it is a tragedy. We've lost over 1,000 Rhode Islanders and continue to lose people every day. So again, I don't want to minimize it.
Sure, yeah, I understand.
We had 200,000 people in the state of 1 million people file for unemployment insurance.
20%.
Brutal, 20%. That's rough. A lot of these folks were already poor. They were working full-time in poverty. You know who's been hit the hardest?
Yep.
Women, color, low-wage people. Vast majority of people out of work are people who just have a high school degree,
Poor whites.
who are industries hitting hard. So, yeah, I stay awake at night stressed about how do we be there for these people and rebuild an economy in a way that doesn't leave them out. So that's why, for me, my response to the crisis has been from day one as much economic as it has been, public health.
And your vision, Rainbows After Storms. You got a 5-year recovery horizon, 2020, 2025. How do you position yourself, as I believe you're beginning to do in the partnership that we have together around training, coaching, job placement? But that to me is my guess is one of many things that's on your mind. How do you become a role model for the nation, a best in class for other states? What does that vision look like for you in the 10 minutes that we've got left? I want you to lay out. People need hope now. They need a business plan for themselves. Whether you're an individual, a family, a company, a community group, a city leadership, county leadership, state, federal leadership. What's on your mind? How can we inform them?
First thing is, for state level, and I'd say for federal level, we need to think big. We need to go big. And by the way, that's what I like about your Marshall Plan. There's no time for tinkering. The consequences of going too small are tragic. The consequences of going too big, yeah, maybe we take on a little too much debt as a nation. Maybe we spend a little too much. I'd rather be there and rebuild America.
Yeah.
I'd rather be there and rebuild America than the alternative, which is skimping out. So what am I talking about? To build our way out of this, I believe massive investments in infrastructure. Most of our school buildings in Rhode Island and in many places in New England are truly falling apart. Completely, totally unfair, inhumane to send children, particularly poor, poor Black and brown communities. These schools are terrible. Rebuild them. Modern schools with labs, with Wi-Fi. Give these kids a chance. Public health, come on, it's finally time for universal, finish the promise of the Affordable Care Act, reach the last people who don't have insurance. Everybody ought to have access to health care. Don't go small, go big. Everyone ought to have what Rhode Island has, which is the 2 years tuition-free community college, or some kind of account that they could get an apprenticeship or job training or credentialing if you don't want to go to college.
Right.
Housing. Big investments in housing. I'm proposing to our legislature right now the biggest investment in housing really that I know of. It's time for serious solutions to our affordable housing crisis. It's honestly, it's no one thing. It's go big or go home, and it's time. So that's the first thing, go big. The second thing is, I hope we learn the lesson from the last recovery that we can't leave certain people out. So the face of the Great Recession, 08, 09, were of working class white men. If you think about it. And by the way, they got crushed, and that's that's tough. Again, I say that. But as a result, we didn't do very much in the rebuilding after the last recession for women and people of color. That at the peak of our recovery in 2019, women were making 60 cents on the dollar relative to men. We pointed out, people of color were not doing better. Women came out heavily indebted. 2/3 of minimum wage earners are women. Come on. This crisis now, when we're building back, and as VP Biden says building back better. Let's an equity lens to the way we rebuild. Let's not rebuild and leave Black people out of housing and education. Let's not rebuild and leave women out of a chance to get high-paying jobs and affordable childcare and public pre-K. It's like, I think it's essential. I think it's essential for our democracy to rebuild with this equity lens. So I have passion about this, and the work that we're doing together. I don't know, talk about it for a minute, but it's the
Sure.
job training.
Sure.
They guarantee job at the end of the training. It's not train and hope you get a job. You graduate, you got a job.
Not train and pray.
Not train and pray. It's train and get a job.
Right.
And then wraparound services. You can't put your life on hold for job training. You got a
Right.
kid, you need childcare. You're poor, you need a free bus pass. You're buried in debt with a terrible credit score, you need financial coaching,
That's
which
right.
is what you are providing. So we're going to give you that wraparound services, childcare, financial coaching, and transportation to get you to the finish line of the training to get you a job. I think anything short of those kind of robust investments, it won't cut the mustard. And we'll be here 10 years from now wishing we had done more.
And it's not train and pray, it's train in place. But it's for anybody watching you and saying, oh, this is a giveaway program. They're trying to, this is, printing money from heaven. Oh, can you just say very clearly where these jobs that they're being placed into are coming from? Are these state jobs, government jobs? Where are they coming from?
So they're coming from the private sector, right? The private sector, CVS, Bank of America, Raytheon, Amazon Web Services, Microsoft, Salesforce.
Yeah.
Yep, I mean, it's a long, long list. Electric Boat. And I went to them. By the way, I went myself to the CEOs and I said, don't give me your money about you can't hire people if they don't have a college degree. You can't hire people if they've been formerly incarcerated. You can't hire people if they're in drug recovery. I don't want to hear that. I want to hear you're going to hire people if they can do the job.
That's right.
Even if they've spent some time in jail, even if they don't have a college degree. If they pass the training and they can do the job, you got to hire them.
It's right.
And you know what? The CEO said, we're in. They said, Gina, we're in. And we're going to put 6,000 people to work before the end of the year. We're going to do it.
And this is, look, 90% of all jobs, as you know, come from the private sector. Even though people think that, I don't know, I talk to people, educated people, 40% of all jobs come from the government. No, it doesn't. Like, literally 88% of all jobs come from the private sector, and most legitimate wealth comes from the private sector. And poor people, like your family, struggling families, who are invested in. We've got all this potential at the bottom of this pyramid. All this potential for enhanced wages, which create more taxes. So enhanced revenue from the small business, which creates more flow, more GDP in a state or the country. If we make the investments you talked about in schools, in bridges, in infrastructure, in people, it's going to pay off in enhanced revenue, enhanced flow, enhanced efficiency. We're not trying to put Band-Aids on amputated legs. I mean, we're not trying to come back. We're kind of trying to come better. And it's a software upgrade that you're talking about. And I think we just need to do a better job, Governor, of making a business case to America that when you do these things, it pays off as an investment payoff, which was 2 + 2 = 6 or 8. And if you don't do this, 1 + 1 actually will equal 0.5 cents, meaning you've got to go back and patch it again. Or worse, rioting, mayhem. I mean, what we're dealing with now, Governor, with the civil unrest and all this stuff, we're 30 years ahead of schedule. This happens every 100 years. 1760 to 1780, 1850 to 1870, 1950 to 1970. we're 30 years ahead of schedule because we kicked the can down the road too long. And people are saying, enough, I'm tired of it. Deal with me. Stop. I'm not invisible. And I know you need me. I don't know you want me. When you're investing in community colleges, you're saying, I want you and I need you. You're part of this storyline called Rhode Island. You're part of the storyline called America, just like your father.
It's so well said. It's so well said. And you know what? People have a right to be angry. People have a right to be frustrated, angry, to feel unseen and unheard and unlistened to. And they're going to keep feeling that way until we do things differently. So we better get to the business of making some of these investments pretty darn quickly, because otherwise the anger is not going to go away. It's going to get worse. By the way, I'd be angry. If I had to work, bust my butt for 60, 70 hours a week, and I'm poor, and I get evicted, and I can't afford health care, I'd be pretty angry too. So,
yeah.
Anyway, I'm fired up with a renewed sense of commitment. And I feel grateful to be in public service right now because we need to move.
Let me ask you a final question, Governor. Thank you so much for this time. We know how valuable your time is. I don't take advantage of our friendship. I try to make sure that every time I talk to you, text you, email you, tweet you, that it's something substantive, because everything you do in this area of your life has to count. So his question should count. If the governor was talking to the 10-year-old Gina now, and you got, and she says, why should I believe in the future? Why should I care? Why should I get why should I go to school? Why should I play by the rules? I don't feel hopeful about my life. What does the governor of Rhode Island today say, not only to the 10-year-old Gina, who's looking for a vision and a path forward, but what do you say to the nation? What is the message? What do you want to leave as a hopeful message for us all, and a point of reset?
I'm very hopeful, and I am very hopeful because young people are getting involved. So I would say to that little girl, I have a 13-year-old boy and a 16-year-old girl, I'd say the world needs you. Get yourself a good education, keep your heart big, and get out there because the world needs you. These problems, they are real. Climate change is real. Poverty is real. Racism is real. But we can do it. We absolutely can do it. There have been dark times in America's history in the past. Crying out loud, we had slavery not that long ago, as you pointed out.
Yeah.
Great leaders stepped up to that moment. Great leaders have stepped up at moments like this at every point in our nation's history, and that's going to happen now. And so if you're young, we need you. Get in there. Things will be better if you engage and make them better. But there's no problems we can't solve, but it's a crisis, like you said. For the old folks like us who are in the game right now, we gotta stop messing about with small solutions, recognize the size of these problems, and give us some real solutions.
Yeah. You are a leader who, the Bible says, where there is no vision, the people perish. You are a leader with a vision. Your solutions are bigger than the problems that we face. And you've got the backbone, the fortitude, the head, and the heart to see it through. And that's why I believe in you. Governor, thanks for being with us at the Hope Global Forum Annual Meeting 2020. I'm sure you have inspired many, many, many 10-year-old young Ginas and 16-year-old young men to live their best life. And maybe even a few older folks too. So with that, I say thank you, and let you get back to governing. God bless you, friend.
Thank you. God bless. God bless, and keep going.
Peace and light.